Hi, everybody. Before we get to another great interview, we could really use your help. IMDb, which is the entertainment database, recently named the Two Opinionated podcast one of its top 100 podcasts. This is a monumental feat for this program. We're a father and son team out of a small town in West Virginia, have been doing this for about 5 years. There's 15 million podcasts out there. About 40,000 of those get to the point that they're listed on IMDb. Out of those 40,000 out of the 15 million, we were ranked number 82. Something that we're just immensely proud of. We're so thankful for our listeners, our watchers, our fans. Thank you so, so much. If you would like to help us out, and we're asking for it, please. It's easy. It's really easy. It's free. If you go to IMDb, that's imdb.com, look up Two Opinionated Podcast, and just take a look at the page. That's all you have to do. I mean, you're welcome to look at the cast, look at the episodes so you can kind of see who's been on the program. Do whatever you want. But even just bringing up the page, imdb.com, Two Opinionated Podcast, bring up the page, look at it. That helps us so much. So please, if you can do anything, we would really appreciate that. Our YouTube channel is MeisterCon Pod. Love to have your subscription there. It's also free. And you can also check out our website, meistercon.com, where you'll find almost 700 episodes, audio and video, available on there. There's also a terrific blog from Brett, and it'll let you know anything that we have going on in studio, if we're covering a convention, if we're going on location, anything that we have going on will be on the website, meistercon.com. Thank you guys so, so much. We appreciate you so much. I can't express enough how appreciative we are of all of you. We never expected to do as well as we have, and that's all because of you. Thank you so much. Enjoy that interview. Bye, everybody. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Two Opinionated. I'm so excited today. I've got author Joe Deluzio with me. So welcome, Joe.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And we have to talk about the book, but let's get a little background on you first. Talk a little bit about what you do and what got you into writing.
Well, I've always enjoyed writing. What do I do? I've been an audiologist for over 40 years. And I also hold a PhD in speech language pathology, and I teach at the University of Toronto, audiology to speech language pathology students. So that's what I do. I've raised 6 children.
Wow.
So the book is called Surviving the Closet, but perhaps there's another book called Surviving the Teenagers. I'm not sure.
I don't know if I could write that one, but I could definitely, kind of relate to that one.
Absolutely.
We always go through that there's that time period around 14 or 15 where they just go crazy. Their hormones are just driving them loony for a couple of years, but they come out of it eventually.
They do, but even earlier you get the eye roll.
Oh, of course.
You get the eye roll and suddenly you're the dumbest person on the planet. But they do come out of it. I think teenagers by definition are illogical, impulsive, irrational. That's the nature of the beast, and you sort of have to respect that.
I mean, really, we all go through it. So we should be able to handle when the kids go through it, but it's difficult.
There's
one thing, like if you're the one that everybody's having to react to, that's one thing. You can do that. But if you're the one having to react to somebody else, it's difficult.
Mm-hmm. I think you asked what got me into writing. I've always enjoyed writing, but academic writing, no due respect to academics, is kind of boring and it's very prescriptive.
That's right.
And the book that you brought me here to talk about, Surviving the Closet, the first part of it kind of wrote itself. It just like it came out of me. I was compelled to write it.
Yeah,
So-
and I love that was the case. It's unusual, I think, for someone to put their kind of novel out later in life. That doesn't start, writing early, but it kind of makes sense if you've been kind of a writer off and on throughout your life, and then you had this kind of idea weighing on you that you could put out there. I could see where it would almost not write itself, but at least the drive to write it would be there.
Yeah, I think it was pretty cathartic for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's
Trying.
talk a little bit about it. So it's Surviving the Closet. And I
Mhm.
think did I see where it comes out on the 7th of November? Is that right?
The book is ready now. The official book launch is November 7th. I think the book will be out November 1st. It's been available for pre-order for a while.
For a while.
And
Yeah. It's on
yeah,
Amazon. I saw it there.
it's on Amazon. It's on a lot of sites.
Yeah.
And they had the incorrect date on Amazon. It said February 18th or something, but
Yeah, it did. It's that
the
February.
publisher was going to fix that. I think they've started to mail out the book now, but I
Oh,
think the
good.
official launch is November 7th, but I was told it will be available starting November 1st.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about it. What's Surviving the Closet about?
Surviving the Closet is about not just my story, but the story of particularly women, but anyone who came out much later in life.
Yeah.
I was in my 40s before I am in my into my 60s now, closer to 70 than 60. It's really about people talk about coming out of the closet, and there's a lot of stories out there but it's primarily younger people, and
Yeah.
how am I going to tell my parents and how they came out of the closet. But my take is sort of looking at the closet you left behind. So you don't just come out of the closet and then poof, you have a new life. It's the whole process. And then you have to learn to live your life out of the closet when you've been hidden and hiding away for so long. So that's really what it's about. And it's about the systems that might keep gay women or gay people closeted. And it's a lot about my journey coming out, but also other people's journeys.
I love the
out.
idea, because you're right. Most of the time, what we hear about or see is younger people coming out, which is not an easy time either, whenever you choose to do it. But I've always been kind of interested in those older individuals who grew up similar to what I did, and it was just, a different time, where maybe coming out wasn't something that was looked on positively. And so people would not do it, or not, they would kind of hide that stuff away with that. So tell me a little bit about, as far as in your case, what was the reasons that you waited, till later to to kind of share that with everyone?
Well, first of all, I don't think I really understood my sexuality until I was well into my 30s. I understood from about age 14 that I was attracted to girls, but I didn't know what that meant. I didn't have a context. I didn't have a role model. At my high school, there are girls people called lesies, and they were jock types, and they dressed more masculine. I mean, if someone throws a ball at me, I duck. So I just thought, that can't be me. And it's normal, I think, for teenage girls to be deeply bonded with their classmates. So I don't think I understood my sexuality until I was a little bit older. And then when I understood my sexuality, I was trapped, really.
Sure.
And also, like many women my age, and maybe just many women, we're raised to be pleasers. We please our parents, we please our husband, we please our children. And if we don't do it perfectly, then we're failures as people. I was raised in a pretty religious home as well, and religion any religion in its conservative form is not too jazzed about people like me. We're an abomination, we're an embarrassment, we're not pleasing to God, we're never going to go to heaven, pick your negative things.
Yeah.
So you you don't feel very, very good about yourself. So it took a really long time for me to, first of all, understand my sexuality, but then also feeling like, well, I can't disrespect my husband. How do I disrupt my children? I guess you sort of feel, well, I'm not really important enough. And how selfish would I have to be to disrupt this little unit? And sort of from a societal perspective, I had it all. I had a wonderful husband. He's still a wonderful man. We had, a high disposable income. We had a beautiful home. We had lovely children. I had a career I was passionate about. So for all intents and purposes, I had the perfect life.
Right.
And so you convince yourself, well, what kind of a selfish person would, disrupt that, or how could I want it?
Right.
Everything else, anything else. I have everything.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's really interesting with that, because of the way we were kind of raised and grew up. That all of that is so true, and you almost feel bad for wanting something that better fits you. So you end up pushing that stuff aside, which over time I would imagine ends up causing, some depression and some, feeling bad about yourself because you're not really being true to yourself.
Right. A lot of self-hate. And I think too, it's really hard to have an authentic relationship with anyone when they don't really know who you are. So, I'm a queer woman, and that doesn't define me. It's not all that I am, but it's an important part of who I am. And I mean, I came out slowly over a long period of time. But for example, when I told my sister, we're extremely close, she was really angry at me, so angry, and not for the reasons I might have thought. She was angry that I didn't tell her sooner, or that
I
I
figured
didn't
that's what it
trust her.
was.
She always knew there was something going on there, but she was really angry about that. But I don't think it was that I didn't trust her. I didn't trust myself.
That's right.
Yeah, and maybe I didn't feel I was worthy. And it wasn't that I didn't have a good life and didn't enjoy. I mean, I always wanted children, and raising children are some of the happiest moments of my life, but I felt like I was living someone else's life, is how I felt. So yeah, you get to a point where you just think, I can't do it anymore. And I had been out to my husband for a pretty long time, and sort of one of the catalysts for me, like the tipping point, he said to me one day, do you know what I do when I come home from work before you? I go upstairs and look and see if there's a note on the bed that you're gone.
Yeah.
And I thought, the closet suffocating both of us. It wasn't just me that was trapped. He was also trapped. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, because it's not that person's fault, any of it. And it does have could be a negative impact on the spouses and the significant others when somebody comes out with that. And we don't talk about that, as often, but it can be difficult on everybody.
I think it is difficult on everybody. And I mean, in the beginning, it took him a long time to get to the place where he's at now, but he doesn't consider our marriage was a failure. He considers our relationship took a different direction. And he came to my wedding with my now wife, and we went to his wedding with his now wife. And I mean, he's an incredible man. He didn't turn his pain into hate, and I really respect him for that. I think a lot of people might have done that, because I know people who came out later in life who have no relationship with their spouse, or even their children. Some won't speak to them, or how could you do that to daddy or whatever. And that wasn't my experience, although there were a lot of painful aspects to my story. That wasn't one of them. He's an incredible man, and it's not his fault that he's a man.
So. Yeah, right. I love that you two have kind of came to that understanding that this is what was best probably for both of you.
Right.
Kind of went with that, but you kept close. I think that's the best part of the story.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, we share children together.
Yeah.
We share 4 children. And the other 2 children are with my wife. So we share 4 children, and we also share businesses together. So
Yeah. A lot of entanglement there.
That's right. And I mean, we're still very close. I see him fairly often and speak with him fairly frequently. So that's a good
what's the
aspect of it.
response been from the book? Has it been mostly positive, or are you getting, some people that are like, hey, I didn't know that?
Well, it's early on, but the book has been the response has been unbelievable. First of all, when they told me that the press release was going to drop, it didn't occur to me that they're actually going to give it to the press. So I mean, within a couple of days, I had like 15 interviews, and people had asked for early copies of the book, and the response has been phenomenal. People seem very interested in not just my story, but some of the aspects I talk about. How do you, like, when you come out later in life, how do you even know who's lesbian? Like, how do you even start dating? There's not a Lesbians for Dummies book at the library, and it's been a phenomenal response. I don't expect that all of the reactions will be positive, because I think we have a resurgence of homophobia and transphobia, and not everyone agrees with people who are gay, but the response has been unbelievable. My family's joking because Toronto is a pretty big city, and the public libraries ordered a bunch of books, and one of my adult children emailed me and said, there's already 2 holds on the book. So
well, that has to feel pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote that, so that feels good, but it's also scary because my guts are splattered all over the book. I'm like, yeah.
You're putting yourself out there a little bit,
right? But I mean, to quote the civil rights activist Maya Angelou, or to paraphrase her, I don't know if you know who she is, but I mean, every time a woman stands up for herself, whether intentional or not, you stand up for all women. And so my story is really about, or the book is really about, the right of women to be seen, and that we are worthy, and that we are entitled to live an authentic life. And sort of the journey into understanding that. So it's different, I would expect, in North America. I happen to be married to a phenomenal woman who's native of North Africa, from a country where being gay is still punishable by death.
Wow.
And there's a lot of African countries like that. So I think not everyone can come out and be as privileged as I am. And I know women, I have met women, going to support groups for women who are older, still living with men, or had been married to men, where they lost their children, they lost custody of their children, where I met a woman whose husband put a pillow over her face and tried to kill her when she told him she was gay. Awful. And even here, so in other countries, it's not safe. I mean, if you live in a country where women have no rights, and they can't even go outside without a man, you're not really gonna go rah-rah with your rainbow flag. So I think the stories for everyone are different. To that end, I'll shamelessly plug, I have a second book coming.
I was going to ask you about it. I saw it, that you were at least writing.
Yeah, there's a second book coming out in May of 2024, where I interviewed people who came to Canada as refugees because of their LGBTQ status, and the stories are horrific, but I think people need to know. People can't address or change what they don't know.
Well, I love the fact that you're still writing. You wrote this one and discovered that there's definitely things there that needed to be said, and now you're going out and getting other people's stories, and especially those people that are trapped in those type of situations. They don't really have a voice, so you're giving them a voice. I'm guessing that you're doing it kind of anonymously. You're not identifying the people, but
No, interestingly enough, they all, except for two, used pretend names when they told their
Yeah.
story. Two of them actually wanted their real names, wanted their real names told. One person was so afraid that he won't let me say the name of the country he's from, just the area of the world. I mean, it's unlikely his family's going to find out where he is and that they'll ever read the book, but that's how afraid, I mean, that's how abused and tortured, and
Yeah,
some
it's
of the
awful.
stories
Well,
are
obviously you found a
horrific.
community there. You know, where did you find your subjects for the book?
Well, Toronto hosted World Pride back in 2014, and
Hmm.
the human rights conference associated with that was housed at University of Toronto.
Okay.
So I went and I was just amazed by the stories of some of the people. And I met some people, and that kind of motivated me to think about the book. So one guy in particular that we sort of became friends, and he'd been in Toronto a really long time. He's from Jamaica.
Yeah.
So I do tell his story, even though he's been in Toronto a really long time, and he introduced me to, other people. But also, I just interviewed two people in August. They were the last stories to tell, and a friend of mine was doing some outreach with his church to a homeless shelter, and they were in a homeless shelter briefly before the people could find them a place
Yeah.
to be in. And actually, I'm having a book launch November 7th, and I just noticed they're coming. I didn't invite them, but
That's
they found
awesome.
out for
Yeah.
the other books. So different ways of finding them. Another couple that came, two men that came from Syria. I was with my wife at a U of T gay event film night, and he was pretty new. His partner wasn't there, to Canada, and my wife speaks one of the languages he speaks, and she started talking to him, and he was saying he's a refugee, blah blah, and my wife goes, "Oh, my wife's writing a book about," and he said, "I would love to share my story." And by the way, I came with my boyfriend, and we'd both love to share our story. So it just happened that way. And some of the people I interviewed, after meeting with them, they decided they didn't want their story told. And I talk about that, mostly women. I talk about that in the book, that they want stories like theirs told, but they still have a fear. And it's pretty traumatic for them. Many of them are still suffering from post-traumatic stress
Yeah.
from their experiences. So
It's surprising to me that we've come so far in some ways, and we're still dealing with so much discrimination, negativity on this subject. It just seems to me that kind of boggles my mind, because in some ways we've made great strides. Other ways we're still way behind with that. I mean, do you, as someone that has spent your life kind of building up to this point, do you see changes in the world that are improvements over when you were growing up, or are we still kind of stuck there in that same spot that we were decades ago?
I think that there had been a lot of changes happening and a lot of positive things in many countries. But I think we've seen a resurgence in the last couple of years of
Yeah.
homophobia, not just homophobia, transphobia, but anti-Semitism, Islamophobia. There's just a lot more hate. And I think that's pretty scary. I mean, you're in the United States, for a country that was so active early on in the human rights and the gay rights movement, beginning with the Stonewall riots and so on. It's just surprising to me how things are moving backwards again. So right now there's several states in your country where a medical doctor can now refuse to treat someone that's gay based on their religious
I know.
belief.
I know.
And
It's surprising to most of us too, that it just doesn't seem real. I'm like, seriously? I mean, all of us are equal, no matter what our situation is. Shouldn't matter. Should make a difference. I mean, everybody should be judged just on their own merits, but we don't do that. We make our
no.
decisions just based on one part of someone's personality. It amazes me that we're still doing
Right.
that.
And I have a lot of respect for different religions and for religious people, and we have free speech, and we have freedom of religion, and people are entitled to believe that I'm going to burn in hell or whatever they want. I don't have a problem if that's their perspective, but what they shouldn't be allowed to do is propagate misinformation. So, all gay men are pedophiles, gay people
Right.
are whatever. And religious rights don't trump gay rights. Gay rights don't trump religious rights. It's human rights. So in the name of religion, you can't deny me the right to own a home or rent a home or buy a cake or whatever. And so that's kind of what's happening. The religious right, in my view, and you pick a religion, it doesn't matter what it is, have positioned themselves as the victim in this, gay
Right.
agenda, like we have some secret agenda to take over the world. I just sort of think if you don't agree with gay marriage, then don't marry a gay person. Like,
Well, that's right.
I mean, my family doesn't change your family, and I don't imagine droves of straight people are going to start marrying same-sex people just because the law allows it.
I mean,
So,
bottom line is we just need to be tolerant of each other, and we're not always that way.
yeah, although for me personally, I sort of don't want to be tolerated. I want to be accepted.
Well, no,
but that's a
100%.
start. Yeah, the being tolerated, I think, is an excellent start. But
I meant more that we tend to we hold our own views and values as the only ones that matter.
Yeah.
And it's not. Everybody's entitled to their own opinions, their own, thoughts, ideas, and that doesn't make them, necessarily wrong. It's just different, and we need to be tolerant of each other and kind of embrace the differences. I think we could all learn a little bit if we would do that, but in a lot of cases we don't.
I agree, and I think if I want to be accepted, then I need to start by accepting other people. So even within the queer communities, you sometimes see a little bit of oppression where, like, for example, there's a lot of biphobia. So a lot of straight people, but also there's gay people who think, oh, bisexual people make up your mind already, or they're just gay and they don't want to say it, or pick your argument. And to me, why would a community that's been so marginalize each other?
It doesn't really make sense.
It doesn't.
You're a community that's been discriminated against, and you're going to discriminate against somebody else. That doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. And I think so. If I want to be accepted, I can start by accepting other people and respecting other people. And I don't know, fundamentally, I think hate is learned, and people need to stop. They need to stop teaching it to their children.
Yeah, because if and I'm having the pleasure of kind of being around my grandkids right now, and they're still pretty young. But if you notice, they don't come into the world with those ideas. The kids, they play together, they get along, no problems. Where the issues come in is when we as adults kind of put those ideas on them, and then it kind of messes them up. But if we just, when we come out, we're pretty accepting to everybody at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, I have 2 granddaughters only. I think I'm entitled to more, but I will respect my children's right to live their life how they want. But when Ava, who just turned 7 when she was about 3 or 4, and then she knew that her daddy's mother was married to a woman, and she'd met us and whatever, and she didn't have a problem with, but maybe she was about 4, she said to me, Gramsy, where's your husband? And I said, sweetie, Gramsy's married to a woman. You've met her. And she couldn't say her R's at that time. And she goes, a goat? Married to a goat? And my son was mortified. But I said, she's 4. She's just
she's learning. She's trying to put the ideas together.
Right. And then I said, yeah, women can marry women. Girls can love girls. Girls can love boys. Boys can love boys. And she's like, oh, okay. Can we make this princess puzzle? Like, it wasn't.
Yeah. They move on.
It was just, and I'm happy to say she now can pronounce her R's, but it just was inconsequential, and maybe she'll revisit it again. Like, at 7, they don't see the world the same way as adults do, and sort of sexual things. I think typically developing children aren't sexualized. They're children, or they shouldn't be.
That's right.
Anyway, so
Right.
yeah. So
Did writing the book, did anything about the process surprise you? Did you learn anything about yourself that you didn't already know?
oh, I learned lots of things about myself. How long is this interview? I think the best thing about it was really giving myself permission to love myself
Yeah.
and who I was. I spent a lot of my life really hating myself for something I didn't choose and I couldn't change. And I think sort of it's okay to be who I am, and I'm a pretty good person. And I
Yeah.
think I learned a lot about that. And I think you explore what makes a family, because I lost not my family, but my husband's been great, but his family not so much.
Yeah.
Some have been okay, but I sort of was erased and from them, and that's a bad feeling because you think you're important to them. How many parties did I host? I love them. I thought I was important to them, and sort of to be sort of kicked out of that. And then sort of our heterosexual friends, when I was married to my husband, they sided with him, most of them, and I haven't seen many of them for 20 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's really hurtful. But you learn when you come out and you meet people in the gay community, and then it becomes like a family. So you meet people that have lost their families.
Right.
That didn't happen to me. My siblings have loved me on both sides of the closet door, but they become your family. You construct families, and you learn that it isn't just blood that makes you a family.
Yeah.
There's other things.
Well, shared
So
experiences can make you a family.
right. So yeah, I think I've learned a lot about myself. I've given myself permission to say no. You don't always have to be perfect.
Right.
You don't always have to please everyone, and that's hard.
Oh yeah.
It's really
Yeah,
hard.
especially when you're a people pleaser.
Absolutely. Yeah. So my wife said to me, please everybody else, how come you don't please me? Like, why do you say no to me? Well, because so
I've always said that you tend to you don't filter with those that you love as much. So you let yourself be angry or to say something that you wouldn't normally say or whatever it is, because you're comfortable enough with that person that you don't worry about them becoming offended or being upset with you, because they understand, they get where you're coming from.
I think that's true. I think it's the same with our children, when your children are little and the teachers say, oh, they're so polite and they're this and they're that. And you're like, do we have the same child here? So I think that at least they know how to behave, and
Well,
not
that's
that my
right.
children were
When they're
rude. Not
home,
that
they
my
don't.
children were rude,
Yeah,
but
they don't
yeah,
censor themselves. They're just
right.
who they are.
And they just let things
Yeah, and figure you can handle it.
Let it drop out. But I think as I get older as well, and as I've been out longer and longer, I become less tolerant of those who are cruel to gay people. And I think it's not okay for people to make jokes about us, make fun of us. It's not okay, to use slurs that represent us to mean less than, stupid,
Yeah.
whatever.
Well, and I'm sure you grew up the same way. A lot of those kind of slang terms, were used regularly. And most of the time, when it was kid related, we didn't know. We didn't know exactly all the negative stuff that went along with the words. It was just something that you would say to give somebody a hard time or whatever it was. And I made this comment with my wife. I love to go back and watch TV shows that I enjoyed when I was growing up, kind of revisit them. But when you go back and watch those shows from the 80s and 90s, thankfully, none of that stuff, is being put into the things now. Like there's things that are said, jokes that are made that nobody batted an eye about back then. But when you look at them, from kind of a faraway lens, they don't stand up very well. So at least in that realm, as far as in the entertainment realm, we're starting to see that kind of changeover where you don't just have casual jokes and things like that can be very hurtful to some people, but at the time we never, never thought anything about it, which, just the fact that it's come out to the open and we're actually having those conversations and looking at it and saying, okay, maybe that's not the right, a very good thing to say. That has to be a positive.
Yeah, I think that's positive, and I think people are becoming more aware, but I think there's still a lot of negative stereotypes. I mean, way back when Ellen DeGeneres married Portia de Rossi, at work, a couple of women were
that was
talking.
A hot topic there when it first
was,
happened.
But I wasn't the most out person. I mean, I was sort of out, but not really. So people at work didn't necessarily know. And one of the women said, "Oh, Portia de Rossi's going to marry Ellen DeGeneres. What a waste." And I said to her, and this story is in my book. And I said to her, "What do you mean, what a waste?" I said, "Are you saying that women are only useful if they're with a man?" And she goes, No, that's not what I mean. But Portia's gorgeous. She can get any man she wants. I said, I'm confused. Does that mean only ugly women can be lesbian? She goes, No, that's not what I mean. And it just got worse and worse and worse.
Because she probably didn't think it through when
she
made the comment, and then she's like, yeah, when you really look at it, you can't defend it.
So she got kind of teary-eyed and sort of stormed away. And I thought, okay. And then sort of months later, she came up to me and she said, "I'm really sorry. I didn't know you were gay. I wouldn't have made those comments had I known you were gay." And I sort of thought, well, you're still oblivious. It's not that you shouldn't make those comments. Maybe you need to rethink your perspective that, even your view, you're a woman, like you're not just there for the enjoyment of men. You have other roles, in the world. But so there's still, and that was a long time ago, but you still hear people make sort of derogatory comments. And I guess because I pass, but I mean, yes, there's a certain look that some lesbian women have, but it's such a small percentage, and it's such a small percentage of the population. And the same with gay men. Yes, some of them are feminine presenting, but not all feminine presenting men are gay. And there's a ton, that's a technical term, ton of gay men that don't fit that stereotype. They are very masculine, they're whatever. So people confuse gender and sexuality, and people sort of have this idea that you can know immediately from looking at someone whether they're gay, and I don't think that's true.
It's not true. I mean, it could be, just like anything. You may be able to tell some, you may get lucky, but it's not just obvious. You don't know.
Right. I mean, I have short hair, not because, I want to look gay, but because I have no hair.
Short. I got that same problem.
So I had short hair even when I was in the closet. But I mean, I liked sort of dresses and nail polish or whatever. It doesn't make me less gay, so people
I know some of the views and stuff we look at is kind of silly when you really look at them.
It's ridiculous.
I mean, obviously it doesn't.
But for the record, I do like cowboy boots.
Well, I think that's okay.
And I know how to drive standard transmission, so I'll take my gay card back now.
That's a useful skill for any of us to have. The standard transmissions are slowly going away. You don't see them as much.
They are. I don't take Uber that often, but the other day I had to take an Uber because I had to rush home because I had another podcast. And it was a Tesla. It was a brand new Tesla, and I didn't know how to open the door. And
they're hard to open.
And the guy's like, "Oh, was this your first time in a Tesla?" And I just kept thinking, how does an Uber driver afford a Tesla? That was a beautiful looking car, but I'm not particularly a car person. But there's a stereotype there. If you're an Uber driver, you can't afford a Tesla.
Yeah,
maybe you can.
I always tell this story. When I was in high school, I had a paper route. I ran a paper, and I think every single friend that I had at some point substituted for me on that route. I'm pretty sure everybody went on it. Well, I had one buddy that went, and his family was very well off, is pretty well to do, and he shows up and is delivering the papers in a Cadillac, brand new Cadillac. And I told him, I was like, I'm not going to get any tips because they're going to see this car and be like, well, he doesn't need any help. That's a pretty good car for a,
Yeah, why are you delivering papers if you have a Cadillac? Yeah.
I don't know. It always amused me because I had, some typical crappy teenager car, and he's out there, subbing for me in a Cadillac, which I'm still not sure his parents knew he took, because I don't know that they would want him driving that on a paper route. But
On a paper route, yeah, excellent point. But I think there's still you talk about stereotypes, but there's still, the idiot questions, and I know I'm supposed to be accepting and tolerant and educate, but I mean, how many times can someone say, you don't look gay? Well, how am I supposed to look? Sorry, I forgot my rainbow flag at home. Or who's the boy? Like, you're married to a woman, who's the boy? There's no boy. But who's the man? There's no man. Like, what are you even asking me? Like,
when you really think about it, when two people are partnered up, you just split up the duties. Some people, one handles some stuff, the other handles another. You handle some together. There's no real boy girl roles. We've put those roles on them, but they're not
right.
really.
But it's just, it's yeah, people have said really some of the dumbest things, and we laugh about it now. When it first starts to happen, you don't really,
you probably don't react. You probably don't have something to come back in the moment, but later you think about it and be like, no, that's messed up.
But I mean, I have to continually come out of the closet, because whether I'm in a social scenario with new people, or a academic, or a work scenario. I mean, if you think about it, a heterosexual person doesn't go, "Hi, I'm het," but everybody assumes you're heterosexual, and you're chatting with people and it doesn't come up, but then they find out you have children or whatever. And I mean, I wear a engagement and a wedding ring. People make the assumption, and they just shouldn't make any assumption, but they make the assumption that you're straight. And then it's always that tango in my head. Do I say something? Do I not say something? Because if they find out, then you feel like you've been lying to them, except you aren't lying. And so you feel like, and then it just doesn't fit well in a lot of conversations. Yes, I have read that book. By the way, I'm gay.
Yeah, you have to almost force it into the conversation, and it's not natural.
No, and it should be inconsequential. I mean, it has nothing to do with anything. But then if you meet someone several times and then they find out, sometimes people are almost like, well, why didn't you tell me? Well, did you tell me you were straight? Well, that's different. Well, actually, it's kind of not. So we sort of, if I were queen of the world, there's so many things that I would change, like war and killing everybody, killing each other. But but it would be that, why do we have to put people in binaries? Aren't binaries for computers? Like, why do we have to say anything at all? It just, when you meet someone, you just meet them, as you said, as who they are, the person.
Yeah.
And it's just part of the finding out about them, like they're a gourmet cook, or they ski, or they happen to be gay. So I mean, it's an important part of who I am, for sure, but it doesn't define me.
That's right.
It's not all that I am. People sort of fixate on sex, and it's not just about sex. It's sort of who you are as a person. And people will say, well, how did you know you were gay if you never had sex with a woman? Well, when you're straight, how did you know you were straight before you had sex with someone?
Right.
And when people,
attraction.
Yeah. And when people question, young people who come out, and I'm always in awe of, there's so many young people coming out, 10, 11, 12, coming out to their parents. And I think it's wonderful when the parents accept it, but so many people say they're too young. They don't know for sure. Well, we don't question when children are straight. We don't say, oh, they're too young to know what they are. So why do we question it when people, when someone that's 14 says, well, I'm gay? Why do we say, well, you're too young to know? We don't say that to straight kids.
You're right. We don't. Yeah, I mean, that's a fair question, I think. With that, do you do you have any advice for those that are reading the book and thinking, hey, some of this applies to me? Is there something that you learned that helped you to feel more comfortable in your skin?
Well, I think first and foremost is to love yourself and know that you're worthy and you are entitled to live your authentic self. But for people that are trapped in a closet, assuming nobody's going to kill them, if they come out, I think you just take one step forward and just sort of inch your way towards the door and tell one person, tell somebody you trust, and maybe tell another person. You don't have to, leap out of the closet with
Right.
cape, come out when you're safe, when you feel safe. But I think the most important advice is that you have a right to live as your authentic self, and you are worthy, you have value, and you have the right to occupy space. So I think you have to, I really had to teach myself that I had the right to be here, as who I am, and not as the world expected me to be, or as I was trained to be. So I don't know if that's, so just believe that you have worth, because you do. And I think you don't feel very good when you're living a double life, or when you're not being authentic. You start to not feel very good about yourself. And I think self-hatred is never good. So I think learn to love yourself, and you have to accept yourself too. You really have to come out to yourself first before you come out to anyone
I love that
else,
because I think that's so important. You have to acknowledge to yourself, I think, before you're able to really present your genuine self to other people. And I think people struggle with that.
Oh, for sure. And I can tell people that if praying to be straight made you straight, I'd be straight. You can't really pray the gay away. You can try, and people will tell you to just pray harder. It doesn't work. I tried.
Yeah, I get
So
that.
yeah.
It hurts my heart that you had to do that, or felt like you had to do that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, that's
Thank you.
I feel, anybody or everybody has the right to be their authentic self, as long as who you are isn't negatively impacting others. Be whoever you want.
Right. Although some cultures would say if you come out as gay, you embarrass and humiliate the family. But I know what you mean.
Right.
Like, you're not inflicting
That's
pain
right. You're not
or
intentionally inflicting harm.
inflicting
I mean,
pain.
you can't be held responsible because somebody else is embarrassed about who you are. That's ridiculous.
Right. And I think for parents, if your child is questioning their sexuality or believes they know their sexuality, even if you don't understand it, even if you're afraid of it, just still love them. Tell them that you love them, and you'll work it out together. You'll work it through together, because there's a lot of kids. I mean, LGBTQ2S plus teenagers are way overrepresented in homelessness, because they get kicked out of their homes when they tell their parents, or the parents say, well, if you're going to be gay, you can't live here. And that's a horrible thing to do to any child for something they didn't choose and they can't change. So why would somebody choose on purpose to go against the norm? Why would you choose to be discriminated against?
You wouldn't.
Exactly. So I think before, just because you don't understand it or even agree with it, you can still love the person and accept the person, and you can sort of work through your feelings, but don't reject them, don't hate them, they didn't do it to you. They didn't do it to anybody. That's just who they didn't say that they didn't do that to upset you or to humiliate you in front of your friends. And if your friends don't love you because you have a gay child, you might want to think about a different friend group.
Maybe time to get new friends. That's right.
Yeah. Note to self, let's find some new. It's not like, they're convicted murderer or something.
That's right. So. That's right. Well, Joe, thank you so much for telling us a little bit about your story and sharing the book. So the book is Surviving the Closet. It comes out on the 7th of November. That's pretty exciting to
it's
get
very
your
exciting.
first book published and
It's
and
very
have
exciting.
people kind of look it over. And the best part is you're already working on the sequel.
That's right. Well, it's almost done, actually. Effectively done. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's awesome. And you definitely, when you're ready to put that one out, you have to come back and tell us about that one.
Thank you. Okay, people, you heard it here first.
Yeah, you can hold me to that. I'll bring
Yeah.
it.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for making me feel comfortable.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. So I think we've hit on everything you've got going on. Where can we find you on social media?
I know I'm not on social media. I have to get on. I'm not even on Facebook.
Well, now that you got a
But
book out, you better get you something.
right, it's amazing how much publicity I've managed to get without being on social media. I will have to. I mean, I don't jog or blog or vlog or tweet or
Right.
twerk or whatever, but I will have to start doing that. But my email is J-O dot my last name Deluzio DELUZIO @gmail.com if anyone wants to email me, and I will work on getting on that social
Awesome.
media.
Well, Joe, thank you so much. This has
Thank you
been
so
the
much.
best. And you definitely open invitation when you're ready. Just holler and we'll get you back on.
I'll hold you to it. Okay, thank you so much. Take care.
You're so welcome. Hold on one second for me.
Okay.
I really enjoyed that interview, Joe Deluzio. I hope you did as well. I think it's such a trying to find the right words. I think it's a subject with older individuals who are just coming out that we don't talk about enough. Those of us that were raised in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, we were raised up a certain way. And that doesn't, there was some good, but there was definitely some negative things that in how we were raised. And I think we're all grappling with how to adjust so that we're treating everybody equally. We're valuing the person that they are, and we're allowing them to be the person that they are. We're struggling with that. Very important that we keep talking about it. Very important that we keep pushing forward so that everyone can grow up and be themselves. It shouldn't matter what our orientation is. That shouldn't matter with that. It does. And I'm the first to tell you that, I have made tons of mistakes growing up, and I've said the wrong things. I've done the wrong things. But like most of us, I'm out there actively trying to get better, and hopefully conversations with Joe and others will help with that. So please, if you can, support Joe and her book, Surviving the Closet. It's out on November the 7th. I love the conversation with the religious stuff. I've mentioned on this show many times, my grandfather was a Baptist minister, pretty old school. I've had a difficult relationship with religion growing up, just being honest. I absolutely adored my grandparents. I just thought they were the best. And most of my positive views on religion came from them. But I do have some negative feelings and some, let's say, some turmoil because of the fact that religion preaches love, but doesn't always live up to that for everybody. Religion, to me, it needs to be all inclusive. Doesn't mean that you have to, there's different religions, but whatever your religion is, if you want to be a member of that, you should be able to and not be discriminated against. We don't always live up to that. And I have struggled with that throughout my life. I'm sure a lot of you have as well. It's just something that we have to keep pushing forward and getting better. No one should feel like they have to hide themselves. No one with that. And I'm glad that, over the course of my life, I have realized that. I have made changes to get better, as far as discriminating against anyone. Hopefully you're doing the same. I'll get off my soapbox right now. Really enjoyed that interview. Joe was, she's very open, very honest, very vulnerable. Really appreciated her coming on. Hope you enjoyed that as well. Just a quick plug for us. If you're finding us for the first time, our YouTube channel is MeisterCon Pod. Please subscribe. That really help us out. You can find almost 700 episodes, if you can believe it, audio and video on our website, meistercon.com. So please check us out there as well. Thank you guys so much. Till next time. Bye, everybody. Hi, everybody. I'm once again here to ask for your support. It's been a big year for the Two Opinionated podcast. Back in February, we got to live out a dream, moderate for William Shatner here in our hometown. In May, we passed 100,000 downloads on our YouTube channel, and we followed that up in June with 50,000 downloads on the audio side. We recently posted our 600th episode, which is pretty good volume for just a father and son operation. Not too many podcasts can keep that volume up. We've been doing this now for 4.5 years, 600 plus episodes. We recently hit 1,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel, which is a really big deal for us because we've always gotten the views, but have struggled to get people to subscribe. So that 1,000 was a big deal for us. And best of all, we were recently named one of the top podcasts on IMDb, which is the entertainment database. Those that are ahead of us, we came in at number 82. Those that are ahead of us are bigger companies like Disney, mostly Marvel, and Joe Rogan, that type of podcast. So for us, being just a small West Virginia father and son podcast, to be in the top 100 out of 15 million, it's a pretty big deal for us. So thank you for everything you've done for us so far. Got a couple little ways, though, that you can help us, and they're free, and they're really easy. If you haven't checked out our YouTube channel yet, please go to YouTube. It's under MeisterCon Pod. Just hit subscribe. It's free. Doesn't cost you anything. Really helps us a ton. And maybe even more important, if you could go to imdb.com, look up the Two Opinionated podcast, and just look around the page. Just having that traffic on the page really helps us out. So that's a couple easy ways that you can support us, even if you're not listening or watching all of the time. And we want you to listen and watch, because I think that our guest list, I would put up against anybody, any other show, podcast, anybody out there. I think our guest list holds up. So please check us out. You probably will find somebody that you like, or maybe somebody that you didn't know you liked, but kind of discovered them on there. There's tons of that. If you're into music, we have that too. If you like books, we've got authors on there. If you're more into what goes on behind the scenes in the entertainment world, we've got producers, directors, video artists, anything you can think of that happens behind the scenes, we've had them on the show. So definitely check us out. Thank you guys so much. Until next time. Bye, everybody.